Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Video Game Hunting here on Player One Start. And as I remind you to click subscribe and the bell icon to be notified when I make future posts, I am making my way from my home in central Illinois to the border city of Davenport, Iowa to visit a retro game store I haven't been to in a long time on this channel. Our destination is in the middle of a shopping mall. Yes, those things still exist. Although it is much more lively than on the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 latest remaster. This store has a lot of offerings, as you can see by the shelves they have on here, but the first thing that caught my eye was the PlayStation 2 section. I didn't end up getting anything for the PlayStation 2, as it is not a high priority for me to collect for at this time. Spinning back around and taking a look at the other side of the aisle, you can see some Nintendo DS, Wii, and above the Wii, we have some GameCube titles. And this is something I look for off and on, as the GameCube prices have skyrocketed, but it's not really something I've had as a high collecting priority as a result. However, the first game on the top here, Hot Wheels World Race, was one I have seen for other systems, but I don't actually have any copy of this game yet. So I decided to check it out. The front and the back artwork look pretty good. During the pandemic, I noticed a lot of stores were clearancing out their PSP selection, so I'm not really collecting for this much either, but they had a decent selection in this store. What I am looking for are the games that are usually kept behind the glass display case. And in here you can see a lot of games for retro systems that I normally showcase on the channel. Down here on the bottom shelf there are a bunch of Sega Genesis titles, Sega 32X, and a lot of Sega Saturn titles. I mean, not a lot, but a lot more than I'm used to seeing in these stores. In front are some of the loose titles they have. I've actually been collecting a lot of Sega Saturn loose because the pricing, complete in box, is insanely expensive. And as if to illustrate my point, right behind it is the game The Last Bronx, which isn't really too badly priced, but then check out the price on Die Hard Arcade. Yikes, that is expensive. Above that though, we have some games that are a lot more decently priced. First off, I have to point out the ColecoVision titles they have off to the side here. Mr. Do's Castle has been a game that has been recommended to me several times on that system, so maybe I'll have to pick it up. I already had the Magnavox Odyssey 2 titles here, but what really impressed me was the selection of Commodore 64 cartridge games they had out here. There are some pretty quality titles for this. Ms. Pac-Man, Moon Patrol, Pole Position, Centipede, Galaxian, Donkey Kong. I mean, I'm not going to read out all of these, but all of those games that I mentioned are games that I would play on this system, so I'm going to have to come back here and give this some more thought. Another thing that caught my eye in this case is the roller controller for the ColecoVision, which I've actually been on the lookout for a while. Sadly, I don't want to pay over $100 for it, but it's still neat to see. They also have that special enhanced controller off to the side here as well for the ColecoVision, and it's again a controller I don't have, but nothing I want to spend this much on. And something else I'm not used to seeing very often are complete in-box Atari 2600 games. And speaking of loose Atari games, they definitely have their selection down here as well. And hiding off in the corner are some Atari computer game cartridges. It has been a while since I've found a game for the Intellivision I didn't already own. A lot of these I already have, even completed in box. In fact, I just covered Atlantis on the channel not too long ago. In the next display case, I found something kind of odd here. Here they have all their cheap Game Boy, DS, and other portable game console stuff that they would usually have sitting out in a bin, but they have it behind the glass and you have to ask a clerk to come unlock it so you can go leaf through them. This is the first store I've ever been to where they've done this. Next to that, we have some loose N64 games. Above that, of course, they have their Super Nintendo and regular Nintendo Entertainment System games. I've also been focusing on finishing up collecting for the Super Nintendo, grabbing a few games I'm missing for the Ultimate Super Nintendo review. And while I'm excited to see a bunch of Nintendo Entertainment System games, after I reviewed this case more carefully, I didn't really find anything I didn't already have or wanted. I guess that can be a flip side to the video game collecting curse, is that you won't find something on every trip. Across from that area though, I did notice that behind the case at the front of the store, they have a whole bunch of controllers and accessories all labeled out so you can see which ones they have in stock and which ones you can grab. This is actually really nice. I wish the stores in my area would do it this way, because it did make it easy for me to just look through and see if they have it. Here, every bin is clearly labeled and you can see if what you're looking for is in stock, and I don't have to keep looking around if I find the bin that's labeled and empty to see if they still have something. I don't know, I was just really impressed with this, as I haven't seen this in any other store, and this was something I really enjoyed seeing. Another game system I started collecting for during the pandemic was the original Xbox, as games for that system hasn't quite crept up the way that GameCube or PS2 titles have. I didn't get footage of me finding each individual game, but I did grab a stack of games that mostly includes games that had the Only for Xbox logo on them. Also, I found a PlayStation 3 game I've been looking for a little while, and that is Silent Hill Downpour. And before I head up to the checkouts, I do actually take a look at all of the new system games, but I guess this would be considered previous gen, right? They're still making games for the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, but they're not quite current gen anymore. Doesn't make it retro yet, but I'm still keeping an eye on some of these games for the pricing to go down so I can get them for dirt cheap and clearance prices. One thing I noticed since the last time I've been in this store is just how much of it has been dedicated now to collectibles instead of video games. These other glass cases that I'm showing now used to have video game consoles and other video game-like collectibles in here, but now they're devoted completely to pop figurines and card collecting games. And yes, they're even trying to get it on the VHS collecting craze, at least with the Star Wars Trilogy Special Edition, which I did find a little bit nostalgic because this is the one I've owned since 1997. They did have video games scattered throughout these cases in some locations, but nothing really that I either didn't already have, like Wii Sports Club, or things I didn't want, like the Powerpuff Girls game for the GameCube. But one thing that did catch my eye was this green Xbox console. Apparently this was some sort of Mountain Dew limited edition Xbox, and I've never seen one of these until now, didn't even know they existed, and even though I do like the color and I would like to grab it, I'm not about to spend this much money on an Xbox, as I already have a couple of them. I actually find it entirely ironic that you can buy an Xbox Series S, current gen system, for cheaper than this original Xbox. But seriously, would any of you pay this much for this Xbox? If so, let me know in the comments below what you think about this. And as I was checking out, I did happen to see something which, yes, did catch my eye, even though I have to zoom all the way in here. It's an Atari Lynx game that I don't already have, Hard Drivin'. I used to play this game for hours on the Sega Genesis, maybe I'll have to pick this one up. And I did end up grabbing some Sega Saturn games as well, and if you notice, the price label on the Die Hard arcade game came down significantly, so I decided to pick it up as well. I'll show you the final haul here at the end of the video, but for now we're going to leave this store and head not too far away to a strip mall to another video game store I've never been to. All I did was type in the phrase video game stores near me into Google Maps and this store popped up. I wasn't quite sure what to expect, if this was going to be more like a GameStop style store or more like the store I just left, so I decided to go ahead and check it out. My friends were a little less than enthused about coming to this store because we had just left this area and went like 4 miles across town, and then I looked up the video game stores and then I had to backtrack a lot further. One of the first places I always stop is the Wii U section, as I am still only missing one retail release game to complete my collection. Sadly, they don't have the Book of Unwritten Tales 2 here, so I decided to move on. Here, the GameCube and N64 selection was a bit lacking, having only the common sports titles, but it was here where I noticed something kind of strange. All of the N64 titles have the box art, but they are all in DVD cases. And this is something I don't think I've seen any other store do, at least not one that I've been to. This is actually kind of smart because it allows me to browse through the titles a bit easier, as I can pick the games up off the shelf and actually tangibly hold something, rather than trying to look into a glass display case to see if they have something I want in there. But don't worry, they have glass display cases as well. I also liked how when they grouped things by a brand, they did it by all of their consoles at once. Like on the Sega shelf, you have Master System, Saturn, Genesis, Dreamcast, CD, you have them all. Which did make it quicker for me to find the titles I was looking for, such as Wheel of Fortune on the Sega Genesis. I did notice they had a decent little selection of Vita games on here. I actually looked through all the titles I didn't own and found out Ridge Racer was the only one I don't currently own. Maybe I'll be back for that one. And yeah, if you can't afford to pay now, don't worry, you can put some of these games on layaway. And the nostalgic feelings continue. Overall, I did like going to this store. I did find a few games I ended up picking up, but I didn't get any footage of me grabbing those games because, again, I was using my phone for research instead of filming. Again, I will show you what I picked up at this store at the end of the video, but as we left, I was curious if there was another video game store like this in this area, as where I'm at is Davenport, Iowa, but Davenport is actually a part of what is known as the Quad Cities. There are 4 cities right next to each other, 2 on the Iowa side, 2 on the Illinois side. And yes, across the river there is another one of these stores that I decided to go in and check out. This was now at the end of our day before we started heading back to central Illinois, so this was our last stop before we headed back home. By this point I think my friends were a bit more anxious just to get going and not spend more time in the store, plus we only had about 20 minutes before they closed. But this stop ended up being worth it as a quick detour on the way home, as I did find a few more Sega Saturn games. Nothing too rare except for this Virtual On, but still games that I didn't have. And it has been a while since I've seen an Atari Jaguar game just sitting out in the wild. Sadly, this is a game I already had, but it was nice to see an Atari Jaguar game out here just sitting out in the blue. Up above that, they had a few more noteworthy PlayStation 1 games, and a few more common Sega Saturn titles here in the bottom corner. But as I said, we only had 20 minutes to look around, so at this point I stopped filming and started making my purchase selections before we headed home. And here's the game haul I ended up walking away with after my trip to the Quad Cities. I was very happy to get a lot of cheap but common Sega Saturn titles, as well as a couple rarer and more expensive ones. The N64 games were nice, as well as some TI-99 4A cartridges. And yes, I'm happy that I got a PlayStation Vita game I didn't have, even though it's not complete in box, as well as the Atari Lynx and all of these OG Xbox games. I hope you all enjoyed taking this trip with me. If you did, remember to leave a like on this video, and leave a comment below about something I found in the video or something I passed on that I definitely need to go back and grab the next time I'm over there. Also let me know what kind of luck you've been having video game hunting around your area, and maybe I'll have to check it out sometime. But until then, I have a lot of games to play. If you like this video and you'd like to help out with future projects on this channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. A special thanks to those Patreons you see on screen. Also, if you like what you see, please remember to leave a like and click that subscribe button on your way out. As always, I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.